Well, let me welcome you to the conversation segment of the Signature Show this Sunday. I'm sure that you've enjoyed the other segments of this program. We're trying to interrogate a number of issues in our polity. But if you are following Nigeria's national conversation today, you'll agree with me that it is not just toxic, it is divisive. It queries our very existence as a nation. Go to the National Assembly. The conversation is so centripetal, pulling us on the sides. In the media, the reports you get are frightening. Among our leadership, in all sectors and from all sections, there doesn't seem to be a conversation that creates an objective destination for Nigeria. What is this country going to be? How are its people supposed to operate harmoniously and happily? It's a big challenge. I don't have the answer, but I want to say that amongst nations of the world, people, societies have come to such junctures as we are in now. And certain voices ring out to bring those nations back to the path of not just unity, but of understanding, and a clear understanding of what they stand for. What are those voices in Nigeria? Do we really have them? And I'm excited this afternoon to have Professor Ihechukwu Madubike. Let me introduce him my own way. Professor Madubike was chairman editorial board of Champion Newspapers when that newspaper was first among equals. Mention his name within the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and Albert Ikoku, you don't need to be told who he is. First a philosopher, then an author of books, then a media manager, a politician of the progressive variety, and now I dragged Dr. Madubike out of his rest. He just returned from checking up his health in UK. Prof, you are welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you again for so many years.
Prof, I don't know whether I'm happy, because if you listen to the conversation in our country today, you think that amalgam is only 2 hours away. Arguments so desperate, as if new nations, new peoples are emerging from the same Nigerian nation, as if people are going to cut the throat of others next morning. And media reports blood, death. Let me ask you, Prof, do we have the voice of reason still remaining in this country? And if we have, why are they not ringing out?
Very interesting narrative, very interesting existential questions. We have to situate your questions in the realm of existentialism, which, as a philosopher or philosophy, posits that man exists and then creates the essence. For instance, you have a table, you've created a table. You give a value to that table. That's existentialist philosophy, and you can very easily well apply it to a Nigerian situation. First of all, Nigeria has to exist, has to develop a praxis, a lingua franca, so that when they converse, they can understand themselves. So you've talked about conversation, whether toxic or friendly, whatever way you describe it. We don't have a language. A philosopher will tell you Nigeria has no language. Nigeria has languages. I know when we were talking about independence, I was still a young kid. And Nigerians were talking about changing the name of this country once it became independent. Other countries around us have changed their names. They have something they can be proud of. Togo, Republic, Ghana, Gold Coast, Ghana, Burkina Faso, and so on. They are all new names that the people imposed on themselves, chose for themselves. Nigeria said no. That Lugadian hubris that our name symbolizes, that they will continue with it. And if you read my book called Nigeria and the Lugadian Hubris, maybe before you go, I'll give you a copy, then we'll talk about it later. In one of the chapters, I said that Nigeria is a creation of violence. And that is why Nigeria is bound to violence. The beautiful ones seem not to have been born, even though we are so blessed. Do we have philosophers? Do we have people who have spoken? Sure, we do. The Nnamdi Azikiwe, who could be a greater philosopher than himself? The Awolowos, they were philosophers, they were leaders of this country. And when you talk about the Ahmadu Bellos, you can also see their own philosophy, their mindset. The three founding fathers never agreed in their philosophies. Now check it. Zik wanted a Pan-African kind of Nigeria. Awo was more Western looking, inward looking. Let the West be for itself. The Ahmadu Bello's philosophy is we want to take Quran to the sea. These are asymmetric relationship by the founding fathers. Whatever else they did that brought about our being together is a process that has not worked till now. Do we have writers? We've had them. Did they speak out? Yes, they did speak out. They did. The first generation. The Okibos, the Wole Soyinkas, the Chinua Achebes, the artist as a teacher is one of the speeches or the write-ups or the essays of Chinua Achebe. Wole Soyinka carried a gun. The writer as an activist. Okibo died in the war. Like some writers in the West, Solzhenitsyn is one of them, or was one of them. So we have artists who wanted also to set up a philosophy of living, who were tired with this country. Literature played its own part, where authors became teachers. And that is emblematic that the last work of Chinua Achebe was There Was a Country. The title. Many people misunderstood that title. I think now they're beginning to understand, appreciate what it meant. There was a country. And those of us who grew in the early part of that country can tell you today that there was a time we were hopeful. We think we'll be proud to be called Nigerians. But there's something in the name. I wrote a book called The Meaning of African Names. I am an onomatologist, an amateur, somebody in the study of names, which claims why I changed my own names. Not the way some politicians have changed their names and are having problems today. They will change their names because there is something in a name. Nwabueze. And that's why every Igbo child, Igbo parent, family, places emphasis on recreation, on having a child. And see how we're killing human beings today.
We're killing human beings. Yeah. Now, the very first part of this conversation today establishes that, yes, there was a time the artist weighed in on Nigeria's situation. But that seems to be in the past. It didn't turn out to be a culture, expecting that when the old generation moves out, a new team would have been developed to carry on sustaining national values, sustaining the path of national development, and being able to create that language, which is said hasn't existed since Nigeria's creation, kind of. Today, we are in an uncomfortable situation. What are our universities, which are supposed to be the furnace where these minds are supposed to be refined and given to society? Are they developing such quality human beings, quality minds, to help weigh in times of stress and distress that we are in now?
Part of my answer will be found in what I said before. There's no praxis, even for continuity. You haven't, those who led the something stands on something, nothing stands on nothing, as lawyers will say. The foundation has been faulty. The foundation, even the amalgamation itself. Those who created Nigeria did not create it so that they can survive. If you read Lugard's book, you'll find where he said that the British did not create Nigeria for the love of Nigeria. That the British created Nigeria for Nigerians and for the British. Hence the name, the dual mandate. The dual mandate is to create a country where they will consistently earn from, and to leave a legacy in that country, or a system in that country, where those who are monotheist like them will be in power. Even though they realize that they have tendencies to violence, that it was still better to hand over government to them than to atheists, people they called pagan, as the rest of us. That's a dual mandate. And that's what has been going on. It has not changed. Chatham House is still a place that Nigerians will go any day and tell the British creators of Nigeria what they want to hear, and they close their ears to the other side. That's the uncomfortable position we are in. Once we are able to create that praxis that fosters unity without uniformity, which is the Republican ideal, then we're not making any sense. The philosopher may say whatever he wants to say. The writer may write what he wants to write. The poet, it was, I think, Matthew Arnold who said that poetry is peace. But it's personal peace, it's not universal peace. Since poetry is emotion recollected in tranquility, it can't give you peace. How do you translate that personal peace to communal peace? Individual survival is what everybody in Nigeria is looking for now, or has been looking for. But those who have millions in their bank accounts and so on and so forth are realizing that individual survival cannot translate to communal survival. And so that's why we must find a way to end the asymmetrical relationship.
Prof, I was coming to
Yes.
I was coming to that point.
Yes.
If the man of knowledge in Nigeria has discovered the trick played on him by the British as part of our historical reality, and they have also discovered that it is not in our interest as a people, whether uniformity or unity, can they help the Nigerian society? And I want to be a little bit specific. Can they, the
man of knowledge?
Intellect, the man of knowledge,
All right. Okay.
can't he help, and I was going to be specific, the political class to know that it is in their interest to come to terms with this reality, address it, and resolve it? That could then produce the national language and create peace within our individual identities, individual nationalities. Because what seems to be drawn up and down seems to be group allegiance that is giving rise to all this kind of language and all this kind of tension in the polity.
You're quite correct. The man of knowledge functions in an environment that gives him the liberty to function. That's why many intellectuals are persecuted in many countries. Those who can't stand the heat leave the kitchen. And that's why our intellectuals have abdicated. Not only that they are abroad, they have abdicated. Part of their abdication is brain drain. The other day I read that 380,000 plus Nigerians presently are in the United States of America. And somebody was asking why, and that all of them are educated. Indeed, that ethnic Nigerians are the most educated in America. 4% of them have a doctorate degree. 17% of them have the master's degree, and 37% of them have the bachelor's degree. Over 70% of all black doctors in America are Nigerians. They are doing well because the environment allows them to do well. When you have a feudalistic environment where some people are telling you that Western education is useless, and they have not only said it, they have mechanisms to implement it. I've forgotten who said it. Where ignorance is a bliss, it becomes folly to be wise. Beyond that, I think it was George Orwell who said it, where silence has become the norm, to speak out is an act of revolution. And you've heard people who have spoken about revolution, and it's a crime. You talked about toxic environment. That's toxicism in practice. The human mind can only develop where the environment is right. You get a Nigerian doctor here, he doesn't practice well. He goes to UK, he practices well. And when philosophers like Dewey, he was an educationist, lays emphasis on environment as a factor of achievement and education, and some say it is hereditary, but he says environment is the thing. Nurture and nature go together. You can't separate the two. There is another thing that we call the paradox of power. I've talked about asymmetric relationship, which also relates to the Stockholm syndrome. There are very interesting human phenomenon where the slave embraces the slave master. It's part of the Stockholm syndrome. You have the girls that were kidnapped from here. Don't be surprised when some of them said they don't want to go, to be released. They've become attached to their masters. When the home slave enjoys slavery at home, condemns the field slave who wants to be free. That's part of toxic environment, what you're talking about. That's why we are talking at each other, not talking with one another. We've produced, the intellectuals have also produced systems which properly applied could save this country. They're there. I was part of the 2014 National Conference. And we said, take us back to 1960 Constitution, or 63 Constitution. Restructure this country. Let us see whether... Somebody said, no. But the function of the intellectual is to constantly put the status quo in a situation where it will never be comfortable.
Prof, does this country have hope?
Hey, hope runs eternal. In the breast of what? You know what I'm talking about. You're asking me a question with obvious answer. I've told you about the man who is rolling the boulder to the hills, to the top of the mountains. Come on. He goes up there. The thing falls back. He begins again. He falls back. Ad infinitum. He finds essence in what he's doing and begins to enjoy it. Why do you think people are enjoying poverty? Every morning you carry a plate, you go to somebody, he gives you money, you go back. And you still remain in it. A good chunk of Nigerian population, they don't say they won't do it again. That's also part of existentialism. That's also part of giving essence to their living. Begging begins a reason to live. Because if you don't get it, you won't eat. Man can adapt to any situation. You know, Boko Haram did not start when they thought it started. Boko Haram started when Lugard first came here. Because when they came to Sudan, Boko Haram fought them. The people who said they don't want Western education. It didn't start yesterday. It's been there. What happened that when Lugard came, remember that when Lugard came, he didn't allow the Christians to come up north. He had his understanding with the emirs and allowed a Quranic school to flourish. Even in Western Nigeria, there were more Quranic schools than Christian schools at the time in this country. It was the what they call it, Sudan Interior Mission or something like that, eventually broke through. So that culture of not going to school is still there. I would have said that with more education, things might change, because it's not just a matter of religion. There are many progressive Muslim countries in the world today, despite religion. Saudi Arabia is an example. They're doing very, very well.
United Arab Emirates.
Saudi Arabia, Dubai. Many of them are doing very, very well. But Nigerian leadership, which is basically drawn all the time from the north, most of the time from the north, hasn't quite come to realize that religion should remain a personal thing, and that governance should be completely divorced from it. That's where the hope could come from. When this realization becomes part of the elite, the political elite, then we may make it. But in spite of that, restructuring of the country is another element of hope, because we can remain united even if we have separate governments that allow the individual state or region to manage its affairs in matters local without constraints.
This is a conversation that will not end, because I'm sure you observe that I am sold to it. Because I think it's a necessary conversation that must help us find what we are and where we ought to be and where we're heading to. In the past 30 minutes or thereabout, I've been conversing with Professor Ihechukwu Madubike. I introduced him at the beginning of this program. This is not a one-off, because we intend to consider the way we are looking at our country in a more thought-driven manner, instead of political emotions or group emotions, or even constantly recycling and recollecting blood spilled, numbers lost. Of course, those are necessary, those are things, those are pains that touch. But even in the midst of it, I think we should be able to settle down, reflect, think, and find what we ought to do to resolve some of our challenges. Prof, I must thank you for coming to this conversation.
Thank you very much.
As I said, it's not a one-off.
I enjoyed it.
It's not a one-off.
I enjoyed it.
We keep talking about it.
Talking.
Yes, Prof.
We keep talking. I think why man is greater than all other animals, even though he's also not man, is that he can talk.
Prof, who knows whether monkeys also talk their own way, but we don't understand. We can't decipher what they're saying.
We don't understand them.
Whether they hold conferences.
Well, maybe they hold their own conferences, but our own is not yielding the results we want. At least there's no war in the animal kingdom that we know of, because the elephant keeps to himself. The tiger keeps to himself, and so on and so forth. So they understand themselves. We should learn from them.
Thank you very much. Let's see you next Sunday. Good afternoon.